My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
I don't care. I mean, I care, but not in a way to start a movement to change people. I will never tell people what to do. Yeah, a biological machine. Yeah, what is a machine? You put something on one end and something comes out the other end. That's a machine. So anyhow, yeah. So it turned out I was fascinated to watch the bifurcation of people's reactions. I think the most vocal, visible person who commented was the musician Moby, who said, "How dare you make light of this, the misery of cows, and that it's causing global warming and human health." He just went on. I was like, wow. So there's somebody who has an agenda, because everyone knows he's a big animal rights, vegan. Everyone knows that. And so he came to it assuming that I was somehow attacking him or his world or his lifestyle, when it's just information. Somebody has judged that animal life has higher value than plant life, and they've adjusted their eating habits accordingly. I'm not saying all life has the same value as a tree. I'm not saying all plant life has the same value of a tree. If I'm a tree that lives 1,000 years and I'm looking at this holistically for the earth, I would say definitely skin the cow, because the tree relative to the cow has way more value to the ecosystem, by far. Personally, I'm not saying all animals are equal in this, and I'm not saying all plants are equal in this. You want to talk about morals? That morals have, by the way, the book addresses things that you might fold into your moral compass, for sure, but I'm not handing anyone their morals. It's like the people who want to protect dolphins. Dolphins have big brains. They're surely sentient. So I don't want to kill a dolphin, but I'll kill a tuna fish and eat the tuna fish. Well, they're both animals trying to survive. Right. To me, cities are nature, because that's what we build. The same way a beaver dam is nature, that's what the beaver built. I don't care. I mean, I care, but not in a way to start a movement to change people. I will never tell people what to do.
Right now in the state of Louisiana, the minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. Elsewhere, within the United States of America, $15 per hour. It would seem like a relatively simple, straightforward thing to organize a group of like-minded people, whether they be moderate or radical, to militate for an increase in the minimum wage, whether that be to $12, $13, or all the way up to $15. But if you start to organize your fellow dissident intellectuals, who shows up? Who do you meet with? Who offers to work with you? Who offers to work for you? Who offers to follow you? And who tries to recruit you as a follower? Who wants to be your leader once you express interest in this? Communists. The loony left. Even in Louisiana, even with an issue as obvious and mainstream and, easily accomplished as an increase to the minimum wage, you're going to find out just how difficult and depressing it is to reconcile yourself to cooperating with others in this way. And if you don't, if you want to stand alone for the sake of your own personal principles or for your own moral purity, what happens next? Napoleon Bonaparte. It's a terrible thing what Napoleon did in the history of France. If I had been alive at that time, I would have opposed Napoleon Bonaparte. Not because I wanted to go back to a monarchy, not because I wanted to be part of a medieval system of kingship, but because I want real democracy, real republicanism, not, a dictatorship masquerading as a democratic republic. Okay, so I'd be opposed to Napoleon. If I start to conspire against Napoleon. Let's call it what it is. Who shows up? Who's going to work with me? Who's going to work for me? Etc. etc. Guess what? Crazy Christians. Christian fundamentalists who regard Napoleon as the Antichrist. People who oppose Napoleon for reasons radically different from my own. You just jump forward in history a little bit. You guys may not know this, but a lot of the hardcore opposition to Adolf Hitler came from crazy Christians who regarded him as the Antichrist. Okay? So you have a sense of emergency. You have a sense that you have to work with anyone who's willing to work with you to deal with this short-term crisis. The rise of Adolf Hitler in one case, the rise of Napoleon in another, minimum wage being too low in Louisiana. Who are you willing to work with when the only thing you have in common is that you're both opposed to someone as obviously, odiously evil as Adolf Hitler? Are you willing to work with communists? Are you willing to work with Joseph Stalin? This guy you've been listening to, Neil Tyson. The problem isn't that he's wrong. The problem is that he's so inept, he's so stupid in advocating for the correct position that he tends to discredit it, even in the act of advocating for it. The ecosystem's approach to veganism is correct. An approach that puts an emphasis on the right to life of the individual animal. It puts an emphasis on each mouse and each rat having a soul. An approach that puts rats and mice on the same level of human beings as equals. Just as much as an approach that treats dolphins as having a separate schedule of rights from tuna fish. All of those are horrendous mistakes. And in his critique of those positions, he is fundamentally right. And in arguing for an ecosystem-centered approach to evaluating life on Earth, he is actually advocating for something I have advocated for myself in much more intelligent terms, frankly, many, many years ago. Ironically, on this issue, Neil Tyson is correct. But he completely discredits himself, and he completely discredits the movement I'm a part of, and he makes the objectives I'm working toward seem laughable and seem ridiculous. Okay? Communists in the state of Louisiana who say that the minimum wage should be increased to $12, should be increased to $14, should be increased to $15. Communists arguing for an increase to the minimum wage are correct, and yet, nevertheless, they're ridiculous. And working with them, you will discredit yourself. You can ruin your own political career forever by compromising with, being colleagues with communists. Christian fundamentalists, whether they are correct in opposing Napoleon or they're correct in opposing Hitler, right? It's much, much harder to deal with people who are right for the wrong reasons, or even people who are right but who have the wrong attitude. That's harder to deal with than people who are honestly and openly your enemy. By default, we think of politics in terms of ad hoc responses to short-term emergencies. Like, oh, the rise of Adolf Hitler is a short-term emergency. Therefore, we're willing to work with and even have a military alliance with Joseph Stalin in order to oppose Hitler. It's an emergency. All right. You know, I'm deeply morally opposed to our culture of prescribing Prozac, prescribing Haldol, prescribing Lamictal. I'm profoundly opposed to the culture of treating depression with a pill, and I think those particular pills don't work, and I think they have terrible side effects I think there are consequences for the particular patients and the society of whole. Absolutely terrible. And it is an emergency. People's lives are being ruined by that every day, day after day. But if I start to organize dissent against it, whether radical or moderate, if I start to organize dissidents, who shows up? I'll tell you right now, whether we're talking about Montreal, Canada, Toronto, or Vancouver, the West Coast, right? The people who show up are people who do not believe in modern medical science at all. The people who will show up and be your allies and support you and who will try to recruit you or be recruited by you, they are people who don't believe in vaccines, who don't believe in washing their hands with soap. They're people who are totally opposed to all of modern medical science. You can't make that compromise. You can't work with people who want to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Because ultimately, you ruin your own life. You discredit yourself.